Jemma Foster, I want to welcome you so much to Livsenergi podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. So, where are you in the world?
So I am in Somerset, which is southwest England, between Stonehenge and Glastonbury, in terms of places that people might know.
Especially our audience. Do you know our audience is very spiritually interested?
Perfect.
Mhm.
A lot of ley lines here that people might.
Yeah. So I want to hear more about that and a little bit about your background and where you ended up, how you ended up doing what you're doing today.
Well, it was quite a long, windy road, but very organic. And a lot of the time, the teachers that I had in my life kind of came, one example, my herbalist teacher, I ended up in her back garden in Boulder, in Colorado. And we ended up having tea because I was on a walk. We had tea, we started chatting, and then this whole thing sort of developed into studying naturopathy and herbalism. And equally, my teacher, Dr. Ubraj, who taught shamanic homeopathy and medical astrology and all kinds of wonderful esoteric wisdom, came out of a conversation because I was writing fiction. So my background originally was as a journalist and writing, script writing, and I was writing a work of fiction. And a friend of mine said, "Well, this is what Ubraj teaches." It was all around how the universe works. I was writing about the ability of sound waves to communicate, to change matter. I was writing about quantum entanglement, all kinds of cosmic things. And so that was how I ended up studying with Ubraj, was from that conversation. So always throughout my life, there was just this very intuitive path where something would come up, there'd be a conversation, and then it'd be like, okay, this feels right. So then I would go down that path, and then that path would lead to another path. So
you started out as a journalist writing about other things, and then you kind of narrowed. Well, actually, it's not narrowing down. You're quite broad in your repertoire.
I sort of went on a journey. So whilst I was from that place of writing, and I was really writing scripts at that point, and I just finished living in Argentina for a few years, in Buenos Aires. And so I went down this whole rabbit hole of esoteric studies, of working on a kind of shamanic level, working on a very kind of energetic space, working physically with body work, with energy work, I guess it sort of started off from a place. I needed to come in from a place of the mind because that's how I work. So I needed to try and understand from a intellectual space before it could slowly kind of drop into a more embodied space. So when I started off, as I mentioned, we were working with homeopathy, working with energy work, with very out there kind of ideas. And also that led me into sound healing, astrology. And then slowly, I began to feel that I wanted to have more of a relationship with the plants, because when you're working with homeopathy, you have an understanding, the botanical name, how it functions, but you wouldn't necessarily know what it looks like if you were to see the plant. And it's the same with a lot of herbalism courses as well. So that led me into studying practical ethnobotany and foraging, wildcrafting, so that I could understand and see the plants and have that relationship. And I started to have people on my narrowboat in London as a supper club. So I was beginning to bring all of this information into this very physical, tangible space where I would go and I would forage for ingredients, and then I would consult the stars, and I would create these elixirs based on the astrology for the day. I would have people with tuning forks, forking their drinks. So that kind of was an accompaniment to this 10-year deep dive into all these different healing modalities. But
Yeah.
it kind of, yes, took this sort of slow path of integrating into a more embodied space and a more heart space rather than a head space.
Do you still have the boat?
No, up until recently, but not anymore, no.
No. It looked beautiful. I wanted to go there.
It was like this sort of magical portal that people would enter, and yeah. And that was the name Mama Xanadu, so from the Kubla Khan poem, A Stately
From
Pleasure
the
Dome.
Rubicon.
So there's a Kubla Khan is a poem written by Coleridge, and he, probably high on opium, went to this part of the desert in Outer Mongolia, which I actually have been to. And at the time, it would have been this oasis in the desert, kind of pleasure palace for the kings and queens.
Yeah.
And he went there and he sort of writes about it as Kubla Khan. So
Mm.
that was this stately pleasure dome, was the idea that you would come into this boat and be transported to another space.
Mm. And you were on your boat. It was kind of a canal boat, or
Yeah, it was a canal boat. I mean, looking back, kind of squished in 6 people, and I had this kitchen, only a couple of meters wide.
yeah.
I'd be plating up on my bed, and I had washing up in the bath. It was kind of extraordinary, but it was fun.
And it looked very nice.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk about sacred geometry, and that's the book that you have written. I know that you have done more, that you have published more books and card decks, or is it
Mhm.
about to come? But
Yeah, we have this is the card deck, the World Alchemy Lab, and then in October is the book.
the book, yeah. So I will have a look at that later on. But right now we have sacred geometry waiting to be released. So I want to hear, can you define sacred geometry for our audience?
Mm. Well, for me, sacred geometry is really the language of the universe. So everything, material or by any energetic thing that exists in our world has a foundation, and that foundation is the patterns and forms and rhythms of the universe. So it's mathematical, it's numbers, but numbers are also like music. It's like these notes, these waves, and they create the grounds for anything to exist.
Yeah.
So if that something is existing from and growing from a harmonious space, it's very different from something that's growing from a disharmonious space.
Mhm.
So when we have an understanding of the archetypes of the universe in its perfection, then we can begin to bring that into our environment, to bring harmony into everything that we do.
Yeah. It sounds super cool and super abstract in one way, but reading up on you a little bit, I have a feeling that you see the world differently to many others. When I'm trying to grasp sacred geometry, I kind of need to focus my mind and zoom out, and just being able to see everything, like a rubber band, from uh, the smallest part of an atom to universal, like everything there in between.
Mhm.
And just imagine all these the sacred geometry, like a web somehow. I
Mm.
don't know. I'm trying to get it, but I think that you see the world differently.
It's very it's yes, you're right, exactly. It's this interconnection where we can see, for example, the rose of Venus, which is created from, if we're looking at Venus from the perspective of the Earth, the orbit creates, over a period of time, it creates this rose structure.
Yeah.
And you see in particular with astrobotanical perspectives, this relationship is from like the seed, the DNA, the the microbes, everything has the same patterns that you can see in the planets, in the cosmos. So it's all mirrored, which goes back to the alchemical maxim, as above, so below.
Yeah.
The most tangible way and the easiest way, I think, to just connect to sacred geometry is to just go out into nature and just slow down, look at every leaf, go into like micro detail, and you start to see how the leaves of a plant look like your skin. When you look up close at your skin, you see these tributaries, you see these veins. You start to see and just notice where the patterns, notice what they remind you of.
Mm.
You start to weave it all together.
Mm. That's a really good tip. When I go into the forest with my dog, I love to look at the moss, because
Mm,
there are so many beautiful different mosses, and when you look at them close up, it's an entire universe in itself.
exactly, yeah. And it
It's cool.
feels so beautiful as well to feel the moss.
What So now we know what sacred geometry is, but how do you think we should why should we think about geometry, and why should we weave it into our lives, and what can we expect to get out of it?
Mm.
If I can be so frank.
Well, I think to understand the universe is to understand our place within it, and that lends itself to becoming a better human, just from having that understanding that everything is interconnected, and when you start to sort of take apart the what you're made up out of, all the different elements, the fact that the patterns that exist within the blood, within the cells, within your body, are the same that exist in just about everything that you can see.
Yeah.
So you reach that state of interconnectedness that is, I think, as well, going forward for the future of humanity, is to return and to remember this coexistence with nature not being something that's separate from us,
Mm.
uh to embrace the more than human, and to embrace the part that we're just one instrument in this orchestra. And
Mm.
how are we going to play that instrument? How do we want to play that instrument? And there's so much disharmony that we've created, that this is a way of bringing harmony back into our life, like from a wider perspective of our role within humanity, but also on a personal level. If
Mm.
you can bring order into the chaos of your daily life,
Mm.
you're going to have a better time.
Yeah, that's true. And also just understanding, it's like when you try to help the small little insects in your garden, instead of just, killing them because they're annoying to you. It just reminds us that we are part of a bigger picture. And
Mm,
I like that about being conscious about the nature and the surroundings.
mm,
So how would you suggest that I mean, your first tip here to look at the leaves is perfect. Is there any other way you would recommend us to start, um, in how do you say, inviting sacred
mm.
geometry to life?
I think one of the things about the book, which I was really keen to include, which is, some people might wonder why it's in there, because to understand geometry, we have to understand maths or numbers. But to understand sacred geometry, we need to understand how energy works and vibration, and to start to begin to feel into those spaces. It's not always a entirely comfortable space for people, but to really feel into our own vibration, to feel into how we're part of sound and light, and how uh if we can break down the parts of ourselves until we're just in that nothingness, in that expansion, and we can and start to feel into how you're affected by other people's energies. How does it, just to really consider yourself as a vehicle of vibration, if you have a frequency. What is your frequency? What is the frequency of your environment? What is the frequency of everything that you is in your space that you interact with? And I think then from that place, that's the perfect place to then go into sacred geometry.
I think you have a really good, how do you say, path to actually try to experience ourselves that way instead of just thinking it. Because a lot of the books that we publish is about reminding ourselves that we are frequency, that we, and you can up your frequency and so on, and not always feel into the foundation of it. So I think that's a really good tip.
Mm.
So a few questions that is really quick to answer.
Mhm.
Do you have a motto in life?
I think I've probably got quite a few.
You can say more than one if you want to.
I think the one that I probably say to myself the most time is that it is what it is. And I think that, we can get so caught up, and that's another thing about sacred geometry, is that my understanding is that we move more towards syntropy than entropy by acknowledging these patterns and forms, and there's a sort of harmony and a beauty that is a default. So yielding to that, by leaning into that, by surrendering to the fact that we're part of this grand cosmic order, we can try not to control everything so much. I mean, in some respects, we're saying, sacred geometry can help to manifest, which it can, but you're working with, you're not directing, you're not controlling, you're taking what is naturally there, and you're working with that to amplify, to harmonize. And it's a very different energy to needing to control things, needing things to be a certain way, needing, so that's,
No,
yeah, it is what it is.
it is what it is. Yeah, and lean into and just be supported instead of being in control always.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you have the family of yours? Do you have siblings? Are you the older sister or what?
No, I'm an only child.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my parents died when I was younger, so
Mm,
I've been sort of on this path, and I think that's probably also what perhaps has um opened up the space for me to pursue it,
yeah.
or the desire.
Yeah. Hmm. Do you have a family of your own now?
No, just me.
But you look very young, so I guess
That's good. If I can still look young, then that's all good.
yeah. What's your what's your astrological sign, your zodiac sign?
So my sun is Virgo, and my moon is Pisces, and I'm rising Leo
And when are you born?
in September.
September.
Yeah.
Nice to know. So we had a short but sweet meeting, and I'm super happy that we could make this work because
Me
it's
too.
coming out any day soon.
Yeah. I'm excited to see it.
Yes, I should have it with me, but today I'm at home and the book is in the office.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I'll send you a copy, and I'll let you know when everything is up on the web, and you can have a look.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, lovely to meet you.
Very lovely to meet you. Have a nice day now.
Thank you. Take care.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.